Hi friends, welcome to WebChamp. In this video, I'm going to discuss how we can do the data transformation using Pandas in Python. So obviously Pandas is a library that is used for the data manipulation purpose and for the data analysis purpose. Even it provide a wide range of functions that functions are already written by someone else. You just have to use those functions to transform or fold your data to make the data ready for the analysis purpose. So obviously, what are the different types of operations we can perform? So these are the some sample operations which are commonly we use to before, I mean, at the time of preparation of data, I can say. So selecting columns, rows, or adding new columns, or dropping the existing columns, or then renaming the columns. So these kinds of operations, obviously, we perform. After that, we can perform or we can handle the missing values. Then we can filter the data in various ways. If it is a text filter or date time filter or numerical filter, so different types of filters we can have. Then sorting of the data, we can sort the data either in ascending and descending order. Then we can perform the grouping operation and aggregation using pandas. Then merging, the way we join the different tables in SQL using joins. So similarly we can perform the merging operation on these tables in pandas. That is nothing but a data frames. Even we can append and then pivoting and melting. So in other tools it can be unpivoting, but here in case of pandas we call it as a melting. Then if you write your own custom function, so we can apply that function using map function also, or we apply the function using apply function. So we will see those parts also. Then there are lots of methods to work with the string type data or text type data and date time data. So obviously we might need to derive the values from existing date column or text column. So we can do that kind of operations also with the help of pandas. So in this video I'm going to discuss how we can select the column rows, or how we can add new columns, how we can drop the existing columns, and how we can rename the column. So this is what we are going to discuss in these videos. And obviously in my further videos, I will discuss the next type of operations. So till the time, you can subscribe to WebCham to get the notification when I upload the new videos. Okay, let's start with our content. So first, how we can create the data frame. Okay, so in my previous video I discussed we need to install the pandas, and then we need to import that, and then we need to use the read function. So here I'm going to read the data from Excel file. Okay, so with respect to Excel, what we can do, that I will discuss. Okay, so if you write the function, meaning if you are using any specific function in pandas, what you can do, you can uh, click somewhere inside a bracket and then press shift tab button. Okay, so it will open the signature. So IO stands for input name. If you wants to read any specific sheet name, you can pass the sheet name. Okay, so I'm going to discuss a parameter here. So you can pass sheet underscore name here. So it will read the data from that specific sheet. Okay, I'm not going to pass. So default, it will read sheet one. Okay, so here, meaning it has given the index. So first, whatever the first sheet will be there, it will read the data from that sheet. Yes. The next parameter is headers. So you can define which row number is to consider as a header. So let's say if I add headers. Okay, so now default is 0. If you open the signature, and if I shown you, so here headers is equal to 0. If I change this, okay, instead of this, okay, so I'm not going to use the sheet name, but obviously I will use the headers. So if I say headers is equal to 0, so it will not affect anything, because okay, so this is what my first. Let's say if I say first is header. So if I run this, and if I run this, so you will be able to see that whatever was there in my data set as a first row, okay, that is considered as a headers. Okay, so this is what the header parameter, but I don't want to do this. Let's continue with the 0 because zeroth one has the actual headers, right? Later, next parameter is names. So if you want to pass your names, your own names for these columns, so you will be able to pass. So what you can do, you can pass the names. The parameter name itself is name, and then whatever the number of columns you have, you need to pass the names. Okay, so far I have lots of columns. I think I have 19 columns, so I need to pass 19 names. So I will pass A, then B. Okay, like this I need to, right? So what I will do, instead of this, I will create the list in Excel. So that will be more easy for me to read the data. Okay, so if I say 65, then 66. Okay, and so this is 13 count. And then if I go here, this is 18 count, and this is 19. So I have 19 values. So I will use the function called char add this number. So this will give me A. And right, so now let's go to notepad, and here we can create that list item instead of typing everything manually. Okay, so I will replace this with the single quotation comma single quotation, so that everything will get separated by the single quotation, right? So this is what my list of column headers. Okay, and if I come to another here, if I pass the list, right? And now if I run this, so here you will be able to see that I have renamed all the columns, meaning we can change the names of columns. So this is what the name parameter that we can use to change the names. But obviously, whatever the number of columns are there, you need to pass the names for them. If you don't want to change the existing one, you simply ignore this, and this is what you can do, and you can read the data in this form, right? So here I discussed the two parameters, that is what the header and names of columns while reading the data from Excel sheet. Now, how to view the data? Obviously, if I run this, if I try to print the data frame, so what is happening? So it is giving me first 5 rows and by default last 5 rows. But let's say I don't want to do this. Okay, what I want is I wanted to read the top 10 rows. So what I can do, so for that purpose, we have function name called head. Head is used to read the data from or rows from top side. Okay, and by default it shows the 5. So here if I open, so here you can see that int is equal to 5. This is what the default. But if I pass 10, so it will print 10 rows. Now if I run this, so you can see that it will print 10 rows, right? So since index is starting from the 0, you will see last index is as 9. But yes, so it returns 10. Let's say I wanted to do the same from bottom side. What I can do, I can use the tail function. So function name is tail, and similarly it has a default value of 5. So if I press shift tab, you can see that n is the parameter for the tail function, and you have to pass the integer number. So if you don't pass, it will consider the 5. If you pass, it will consider more. So here I will pass 10. Okay, and if I run this, so you will be able to see that it has returned me a 10 number of rows from bottom side. So this is the way to view the data. That's it. Head and tail function we can use to view the data, nothing else than this, right? So what else we can do? So if you want to see the information about the data, so how we can do? So if I come, okay, let me remove these, and if I say df dot info, so its info is a function. It will give you the statistical information, meaning just give you the brief idea how many entries are there, how many rows are there, and what is the index range for that. and then total how many columns are there, and then it shows us the column name and its type. Okay, so how many non-null values are there. So you can see that out of 909 row, each column has all the values, so there is no null value, right? So it shows null count out, right? And then D types. So obviously D types is meaning it's data types. Okay, so these types are a little bit different. This is not similar to the Python. So in case of pandas, string is meaning text type data is referred as an numpy object of numpy array. So that's why it shows object, but yes, we can convert this column to the Python string. That is possible, but we will see later how we can do. So if the no decimals are there, it will show int 64. Otherwise, for the decimal places, it will show float 65. And this is how data types in pandas works. For the date time, it shows date time 64 ns. So these are the types mainly used in pandas to represent or the column data type. Okay, so next function is there is something called a describe function. So if you want to see some information in different way, so you will be able to see that. So what it does, so it shows the minimum value, maximum value for your 25th percentile, 50th percentile, 75th percentile. Then standard deviation, it can calculate, and then count of values. So obviously count of values this much, and then mean of those values. So it is trying to give the idea about the ideally it is good for the numerical column. So since postal code is numerical column, okay, and dates are always in the numerical form, that's why it gives us. But yes, for this is not going to work. I mean, describe is not going to show you any kind of statistical information about the data frames text columns, okay, object type columns. So this is showing us the only for the data and integer or numerical type column. So right, so here you can see that in sales column we can have these many number of rows, and this is what the mean, meaning the average value. This is the minimum value, this is the maximum value in that column, and this is 75th percentile. And so this is a different kind of calculation. So we will see in later videos how this works, and then what is the standard deviation for. So everything will get calculated instantly, and it shows you the descriptive statistic of data frame columns, right? Then there is something called index. Okay, so if you want to see the index row indexes, so you can see if I say df dot index, so it will give you the range of indexes. Okay, so row index start from 0 and it stops at 5009, and step is used 1, right? And if I say df dot column, and if I run this columns, okay, if I say columns, it will give us the list of column names. So this is how we can read, meaning get the list of column names in pandas. So what we can do next is we can see what is the axis, what is the size, what is the shape. So if you go and if you go and try to find out the shape, so it will give you the number of meaning number of rows versus number of columns. If I say df dot size, so what it is going to show is it is going to show us total number of cells, meaning total number of values. Then if I try to find access, so if I say df dot access, so you can see that how many accesses are there. So it says row index, and this is the index for column. It's okay. So this is the information about access, 0 access and 1 access. So You need to remember that 0 axis is equal to 0 is used for rows, and axis or axis is something like that. Okay, so axis is equal to 1 is used for the columns. Okay, so we will come to know while selecting the columns how we perform the selection. So that's what our motto, right? Then n dimension, it shows the dimension of data frame. So data frame always in two-dimensional. Arrays can have the more than two dimension. Now, if you want to see the data types of columns, so even earlier by using the describe function, we have, sorry, info function, we got that information. But still, if you want to see that, let's say you can use d types. Okay, so if I run this, you will be able to see that this is a column name and the data type of that column. So this is how we can get the information about data type. Let's say if you want to select the columns based on any specific data type, right? So there is a function called select underscore d type. So let's see how we can use. So if I say df dot select underscore d types, and here, okay, so if I open the signature, you will be able to see that it says include and exclude. So I would like to say include, okay, instead of excluding, and here I will say int, and I will pass the list of data types. So, and if I say float, okay, and if I run this, so you will be able to see that whichever column is in the form of integer or float, meaning the column data, not column, okay, so column data, which is of type int and float. So we got the data, right? So postal code is in the form of integer, sales and quantities again in the form of int, otherwise sales, discount, and profit, so it has decimal, so it is in the form of floating point value, right? So this is how we can filter the data, meaning filter the columns or select the columns on the basis of data types, right? So what we can do next is, let's say there is something called copy. We can create the copy of data frame using this, but what is the difference between deep? So if I say df dot copy, and here if I open this, so you will be able to see that diff is equal to, by default, deep copy is equal to true. But if you make this false, it will be a shallow copy. Okay, so let's understand the difference between deep copy and shallow copy. So if I say deep copy, and if I say shallow copy, so what is the difference? So if you are familiar with the Power BI and Power BI query, so there is something called, duplicate and reference to create the copy of existing query. Okay, so that is what here represented in the form of deep copy and shallow copy. So if I say deep copy, okay, so if we made changes to the original, it do not reflect on the copy data. But if the copy is of type shallow, so changes to original series reflect, right? So if you are familiar with the Power BI, you will be easily understood. So let's say if I made the copy, okay, so this is what my deep copy. And in case of deep copy, what is going to happen? If I made changes to df is my original data frame, right? So I will, what I will do, I will say df1 is equal to, okay, df1 is equal to shallow copy, sorry, to deep copy. So if I made changes to df1 will not get affected instead of df1 will, okay. So df1 will not reflect those changes. So this is how I can make the statement. But if I made the changes in case of shallow copy, okay, so I'm not going to show you, just you need to write this statement and this is going to work. So there is nothing to see in this. Okay, so if I made changes to df1 will reflect those changes. Okay, that is what the difference, meaning if I made, in case of shallow copy, if I made the changes to the original data frame, so those changes will be reflected in the shallow copy, but it will not be reflected in the deep copy. This is what it means. Okay, then there is something called values. Okay, so values is one of the type of attributes. So it returns us the numpy array. That's it, and nothing apart from this. Okay, so it will return in the form of array. So if you want to return the data in the form of numpy array, so what you can do, you can either use values or to numpy function. Okay, instead of this, if I use underscore to numpy, so if you want to do anything with this using numpy, so obviously you can use this to convert your data frame tabular data into the array format, right? So this is what you can do. Otherwise there is no need to do. So this was a few basics about the data frame that you must know. Now we will see how we can add new column. Okay, so let's say if you want to add new column to the data frame. Okay, so if you see this data frame has 19 column, and let's say I would like to add one more column here. I would like to add a tag as a, this is the data of sales. So what we can do, we can add here as a sales, and then we can assign the value as a sales. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Now if I see data frame on the next line, so here you will be able to see that. Okay, so why this is not df of sales? Okay, the column itself, column name is sales. Okay, that's why the columns are not changed. But if I say tag, okay, so what will happen if I try to add new column, and if that column name is exist, what it will do, meaning what data frame or what pandas will do, pandas will replace the values of that column. That's what I don't want. So here you can see that sales. This is what I don't want to do. That's why I renamed this. And if I rerun this and if I run this now, so you will be able to see that I have 20 columns and last column is my sales. Okay, so this is one static value we passed. But here you can pass the different value, or you can write the conditional statements also, and it will work. Okay, now if you want to perform some kind of calculations, you will be able to do that with pandas directly here by adding the new column. If the column name is exists, whatever the column name you are entering, make sure that that is not getting duplicated. If it gets duplicated, it will replace the value from that column, and this is what you need to take care. Right? So this is how we can add the columns. Okay, even we can pass the range of values, okay, as we want. Let's say if I wants to, meaning a column, obviously we can pass the columns. Okay, but let me say here I would like to pass the range of values. So what I can do, I can take the length of data frame. So let me say df dot, there is there something called len? I don't think so this will work. Okay, this is not a function. So if I say len of df, so I wanted to know. Okay, so this is going to return me a number of rows, right? This is going to return me number of rows. So if you want to pass some values here from the range, or if you want to create your own index, okay, so I will say index, and here I will pass the list of values. So we can pass the list of values here. Now it's not like that we can pass the single value, but let's say if you want to pass the multiple value for all the rows, so how you can pass, that's what I'm going to show you. So here what I will say 0, or I will say 1. Okay, let me loop through this. So I will use I for I'm I for I in. I'm going to use the list comprehension here. I for I in a range of len of data frame. Okay, and this is what the maximum value. So here I will say starting value I will enter, then I plus 1 I will pass, because this will give me the last index, but this will get ignored. That's why I added 1, and then I will say step of 2, step of 2, or step of 1, or if I don't pass the any steps, so default one is 1. So now let's see how this works. So if I run this, and now if I try to print df, so how many columns are there? Okay, so 21 columns are there. You will be able to see that it it remains the tag. Okay, let's say, okay, so that is fixed, that was in place kind of operation, but that is fine. So tag is there, but index column I have added, right? So like this 504509, so this is default index, and I have created one index. So it is starting with the 0, and last row is 5008, but in my case I started with the 1, and this is what my, if you want to give the alternative number, you can just simply say step of 2, but here you need to do some kind of multiplication into 2, because you need to have the double numbers, because we are going with the step 2. Now if I shown you, so here 1 3 5 alternative index I can assign, right? So this is how index or new column we can add. So there are different ways. Okay, if you want to perform some kind of calculations, we will be able to perform. Let's say we have sales column. Okay, sales column amount got affected, so let me uh, remove this, and let me rerun this data frame. Okay, then it will get resetted. Okay, now if I try to print, okay, so it will shows 19 column. Let's say I have to add one column, and that column shows me a per unit cost. Okay, so how to calculate per unit cost? So if I say per unit cost, so you have to divide the df of data frame of, so single column I'm going to select. Okay, how to select the column? So you need to pass the name of column. Okay, so df of sales, then divide by df of quantity. Okay, and now this will add one more column to our data frame, and if I run this data frame again, so here you will be able to see that we have 20 columns, and last column shows the per unit cost. So this is how we can perform the calculation, arithmetic calculation you can do inside a data frame very easily. Okay, so this is what mean to add a new column. Okay, now how we can access? Obviously one thing we have saw here, that let's say if you want to access the any specific column from the data frame, so you can use the indexer syntax, that is what the square bracket, and then you can pass the column name, that is even fine. But let's say how you can select the multiple column. Okay, so if you pass df of, and then here if you pass the comma separated list, if I say order date, and then if you give the comma, and then if you say sales, then if you say quantity, then if you say segment, okay, then if you say category. So this is how, if you pass the list, it is not going to work at all. It throws the error. So if you want to pass the list of columns, so what you can do is you can simply pass the nested list, meaning indexer syntax remains same, but instead of passing the single column name, you need to pass the list of column. That's it. And then you will be able to slice, meaning those many columns you will be able to select this. And so this is how we can access the multiple columns. Okay. So if you want to access single column, just use the square bracket for after the data frame and then pass the column name, single column name. But if you want to pass multiple, so you need to pass as a list. Okay. Then another way is we can use for single column. Okay, if I say segment instead of this, if I say segment, okay, so I can use dot also for the single column. So the way I performed here calculation, okay, so instead of using this, I can simply say dot sales and then dot quantity. Okay, so in this case you don't need to surround the column as a text. Okay, if I run this and if I run this now, even you will be able to see that it is working. Okay, if I run this cell once again, so the column remains same because the way we used columns, we have written the syntax is correct, right? So this is how we can uh, read the single column either in this way. Inside a square bracket you can write the column name, inside a square text as a text, or you can use this. Okay, but this is good when you don't have space and all inside your column name, but if you have a space, you must use this format. Okay, so this is how we can access the column data, right? So next way is, so there are few methods to access the columns, meaning you can access the specific column, you can access the specific rows, number of rows, but how? Right. So for that purpose, you can directly pass the range here. So this is the basic. Okay. So if I pass here, we have seen that we can pass the column names. Instead of that, if I pass the 0, it will return the first row. Okay. Key error. So I should say 0 has to 1. Right. So if I pass 0, that is not going to recognize that we are looking for any specific range of rows. But yes, if I pass the range of rows, you will be able to see that it returns me a number of rows, right? So this is how we can slice the rows. We earlier seen the same slicing for the columns by passing column names. But let's say you don't want to do the slicing with the name of columns. In that case, what we can do, so there are few methods we can use. So first method is LOC. What is the syntax? So if you look here, so LOC method asks you for the starting and ending index for the number of rows, meaning part of data frame. So this is a bigger data frame. Okay, this is bigger data frame. What I want is, okay, let's say I want the data. I don't want order ID. I want the data from this order date, okay, and delivery date, ship date. Okay, so the few columns, and for not for the first, second, third row, let's say for from fifth row. In that case, how I can slice? Okay, so middle part we can extract with the help of LOC method. So this method accepts the parameter. Okay, so we need to read the syntax first. You should have the habit to go through this. Okay, so LOC, it accepts the parameter. Okay, so data frame max, and LOC. Here you can pass the column name. So if you pass the single column name, it will give you the data for that column. Okay, so if I pass the order date, okay, what mistake I made? No axis name order. Okay, so axis we are looking for the Axis is equal to 1. I don't think so it will work, but yes. So we need to pass two parameters. What is the parameter? So this is what my column names, but before that we need to pass 0 as to 1. Okay, I'm doing this only for only one column and one row. So it should work. Okay, df.loc. Oh, so here you need to pass, you cannot pass the directly column name. This is what the syntax you need to follow. And it says 0 as to 1. If I say 0 as to 5, invalid syntax. I don't think so. This is incorrect. This is correct. And okay, we need to debug this. Why unhashable type list? Okay, that is fine. But if I open the property or signature, it says access. ILOC is primary label based and okay, may also be used with a Boolean array. That is not a single label, 5 or A. No, that is not the case. Indexing, okay, I'm just seeing how it works. Data frame, it shows data frame. Okay, single label, note this returns the row as a series. Okay. Viper, what is a viper then? Okay, index. LOC. If I pass the single index, it is going to work. It this mean. Okay, so if I pass 0, okay, it access the data in this way. And next is, let's say, order date. Even I used this method, okay, in this way. I'm not sure why this is not working. Even df.loc is the correct. Did I made any spelling mistake? No. Even I used a range here for the trial purpose. And now it is saying invalid syntax. Okay, so in that case, what we can do is we can go to official documentation of Pandas. Okay, so whenever we get stuck, even I get stuck, I use this LOC method, right? So it is always good to refer the official documents. It will give you the idea. So this is about the indexing and selection. So LOC or LOC method is there. Okay. So here you can see that a single, that is fine. This is not my question. My question is how they used data frame of .loc. Here you can see that. Okay. So I can pass the range. I can pass the list of columns. And it should work. In my case, why it is not working? Ideally, it should work. Even if I pass the list of columns, it should slice those many columns. Okay, so it works, but uh, it might be a different issue. Okay, let me restart the kernel. And if I try to run this, okay, all the cells will, it will run through all the cells. Oh, what is my mistake? My mistake is this. I should not use the round bracket for the ILOC. I should use only square bracket. That's what my mistake. Okay. So here you will be able to say that at the 0th position, order date, this is what the value, and right, name is 0. Okay. Name is 0, meaning the row number is 0. But if I pass the range 1 to 5, so it will give me the first 5 rows. Okay. So first 5 rows from 0 to 5th rows, I'm able to get the data. Okay. So if I pass, that's what I made. I was wrong. Okay. If I run this, it is not going to give me anything because I'm not looking for the index. So any part, okay, it like this. So if I say I wanted to slice the data from 10th row to, sorry, 5th row to 10th row, and I would like to see the data for order date. And then if I pass the list here, this is what I was expecting, but because of round bracket, I was suffering from lots of challenges. Okay, so if I say quantity, okay, this is fine. Now this looks fine and this will work for me. So you will be able to slice the data, or you will be able to slice the part of data frame as you want. Okay, but here what we are doing is we are passing the column names. Okay, instead of this, if I want to pass the index, column indexes, how I can do, if that question comes in my mind. So you will not be able to use this method, but yes, there is a way. There is a method called ILOC, and here if I pass 5 to 10, and if I pass the column index name, okay, so you can see, and see, look at this is 0th, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Okay, from customer name onwards, I want 5 columns until state. Okay, so if I say from 5th to 10, if I run this, okay, now too many indexes. Too many indexer. Okay, the problem is this is what the range I should pass. Okay, and from customer name to state, you will be able to see the data frame. Okay, this is how we can slice. So LOC and ILOC, only difference is that in LOC you have to pass the column names. In case of ILOC, you can pass the range of column indexes, and this is going to work. Okay, similarly, if you want to see the value at specific, any specific position, so how you can do, you can use at method also. So how, but that is going to return as a single value. Okay, so if I say df dot at, and let me see whether okay, it is also using a square bracket. So if I say this first, okay, first is a row index, so at first row, and what is the sales amount? Okay, let's say I would like to see this. So 14.62, if I come, okay, this is what my first row, and if I slide this, so you will be able to see that 14.62. Okay, so whatever the value I pass, that is index. So first index meaning second row, right? Because first row will have index called 0. So this is how we can perform these slicings. Okay, even there is something called I at. So if I use df at, so you can use both. Instead of using the column name, you can use the index also. So if I say 1 and let's say 18, 14, 5, 16, 16 column, I, okay, this is quantity, and let's say if I pass 15, so 15th column number is for the sales, and okay, I'm getting the same value, right? So we can use ILOC or IAdd method to pass the position, okay, not by the name, position of the column. Still, that is going to work. Then how we can access the rows or size slicing of data frame, this is what, so we can use the head method, we can use the data frame. So everything with respect to slicing part we have seen. Then another way is that, okay, it's not like that we can pass, but yes, what we can do is we can use the directly, we can do the slicing also. So if I say data frame of, and here if I pass the list, okay, so again, if we slice the data frame, okay, so if I said the order date and then sales, okay, Okay, let me surround this inside this. And then if I say quantity, okay, so this is like a data frame. This will behave like a data frame. So again, I can perform the slicing. Again, I can perform the slicing here as a 0 as to 10, right? So this is how it's going to work. Even if I say 5 as to 10 or 5 as to 100, so it will return those many number of rows. Right. So this is again another way to do the slicing. You with this you can do the slicing in the different way, meaning without using LOC method or ILOC method, you will be able to slice out the part of data frame. But yes, so you need to first slice on the basis of columns, and then you can go for the. So whatever the slicing you will do, that will be treated as a data frame. Even you can make that as a different data frame. So I will say df2, not df1. I will say df2, and if I run this, it will save the data. And if I run now, try to print or access the data from df2, yes, this is. But the problem is what? Okay, here you can see that the index remains same. Indexes are not getting changed, right? So there is something called reindex. Okay. Oh, reindex or reset index. There is something called reset index. Okay. So let me see whether this method is okay. Data frame don't have this, and the method name itself is there. Okay. So reset index, reset underscore index is the method name. Right. So this method you can use to reset your indexes for the any new data frame. Otherwise, it will by default it will keep the data frames index that from where we have sliced out. But yes, if you want to reset, you can use this method to reset index. So this is about the slicing of or accessing of or creating a new column in the data frame. But let's say if I want, okay, if I want to drop, how I can drop a column or how I can drop a range. Okay, that's what again the challenging thing. Okay, because we have not discussed anything with respect to that. Okay, so what I will do, I will say df. Okay, and I don't want the columns. Okay, so what I can do, I can use the drop function, right? So df dot drop, and here I can pass the column name. Let's say I will simply pass the order date. Okay, and if I run this, okay, so what it says, order date not found in access. Okay, the problem is the problem is here that we are passing the column name, but we have not defined what access. So access 0, as I said, access 0 is referred for the rows, and it is trying to find out order date in the row index. Instead of that, okay, so what we need to pass is we need to pass axis. Okay, so I was correct. Axis is equal to 1. So when I say axis is equal to 1, it will look for this value in columns, and now it will work. Right. So this is how my order date got deleted. Okay, so in this data frame, I don't have the column name called. Let's say I wanted to delete the list of columns. You can pass the list of columns. There is no issue, right? So here you can pass the list of columns you want, and I will say sales. Okay, I don't want any value. If I run this, you will be able to see that I don't, this column don't have the sales column. Okay, if I come here, so after product name there was sales column, so now it is showing quantity directly, right? So this is how we can delete the columns, right? And let's say if you want to delete the rows, so this should be 0. Okay, access should be 0. And here you can pass the list of row numbers. Okay, so if I pass 0, comma 1, comma 2, and this is how you need to pass. You cannot pass a range. Okay, let me say if I try to pass 0 as to 10, I think this is not going to work, right? This will say invalid. Okay, so because here it is expecting a list. you can pass the numbers, right? So for 0 index and 10 index will get deleted. Instead of 10, I will use 3 so that we will be able to see the data. Okay, 0 and third got deleted. But let's say I would like to delete the first 10 rows, first 100 rows, first 1000 rows. How I can do? So this is a list. So here you can use the list comparison with the help of range. So if I say for I in a range, okay, this is what the syntax. You must be familiar with the Python list comprehension, and then you will be able to do this. Okay, so I will say first 1000 row I don't want to keep. I don't want to, meaning I want to remove the top 1000 rows. Here you can see that the my first 1000 rows are deleted, and then later it got started. Now I wanted to derive the number. Let's say I wanted to drop the data from bottom side. I wanted to derive 100 rows from bottom side. How I can derive? Okay, so if you are familiar with this range function, so you can use 5009 is your starting. Then I can say 4010 and then -1. Okay, in the reverse order, I have to give the starting, ending point, and then step is obviously in the negative, and then it will work. And then if I run this, okay, so it's 5009 is not there. Okay, that's why it throws error. So let's say if I say 5008, it will work. Okay, now you can say that I have 4010 is my last row. That is what I specified here till the time, meaning we can delete the rows from bottom, we can delete the rows from top side as per our requirement. If you want to do for the middle, you can do that. Okay, so if I say 1000 to 2, that is fine. Okay, I will keep only 0 and first row, and then it should show us the 1001. Right, so these many rows got deleted, whatever the range I passed. So you must have the very good hands on these things, then only you will be able to understood this. Otherwise it is difficult. But yes, if you want to understood, go through my entire series of Python, you will learn this in detail. Yeah, so this is how we can work with the columns and rows in case of pandas, and I hope you like the video. Thank you so much for watching the video. Have a nice day. And in my next series, I will discuss the next type of transformation. So please be stick to the webcam. Do not forget to subscribe webcam to get the next video notification. Happy learning.